at the notes from last time, it looks like this. Is there anyone who needs the guided notes from last class? Right, I think I've printed out the perfect amount. So just going back to what we were dealing with last time, before this set of notes, we talked about data, we talked about collecting data, we talked about graphing data. Now we're going to talk about how to get numbers out of data, especially numbers that describe how spread out the data are, right? We talked about a few of them. I think percentiles were something that we did a lot of last class, and I think we're all experts on finding percentiles. Then we talked about a very specific type of percentile called the quartiles. Those represent the quarters of the data. So like the 25th percentile, the 75th percentile, those represent the quarters. We also had the IQR, which was the range of the percentile or the quartiles. So Q3 minus Q1. Once we did that, we kind of put it all together and we were able to figure out what the IQR of data is. Then we did a little example on finding these things called outliers. That's kind of where we left off last class. So before we went into actually calculating outliers, we talked about what they were. And they were these things that kind of stood out in the data, right? They looked either way too small to be in the data set or way too large to be in the data set. And that's why we call them outliers, because they kind of didn't belong in the group, right? Okay, I know you can kind of look at a piece of data and maybe figure out where the outliers are, but there's an actual mathematical way to find outliers. And the way that we found them was people kind of sat in a room and decided, okay, what constitutes an outlier and what doesn't constitute an outlier? And they came up with the magic number 3/2, which is this multiplier that determines if something's an outlier or not, okay? We have two formulas that we needed to memorize for the outliers. The first one was to take the first quartile, subtract off 3/2 times the IQR. The second one was taking the, third quartile and adding 3/2 times the IQR, okay? So we started this example and this example told us to calculate to see if there were any outliers. First thing is putting the numbers in order, right? We always got to put the numbers in increasing order. Second thing we did was we found the first quartile where we multiplied 0.25 times the total, and it told us which number was our first quartile. That ended up being 44. We also found the third quartile, which was 57. And the IQR was subtracting these two, so we got 13. Okay. So what we did is we went to our calculation, which told us to take Q1 minus 3/2 times the IQR, and we got 24.5. Let's do the other one. So let's take Q3 plus 3/2 times the IQR. Okay, we calculated Q3 to be 57. We know we have 3/2 times 13. So we have 57 plus 19.5, which gives us 76.5. Now, let me just explain another term we use for this. What we just calculated was the lower outlier boundary and the upper outlier boundary. Okay. Let's talk about what these numbers actually mean. Okay. 24.5 represents the lowest thing that determines if something's an outlier. So anything below 24.5 is an outlier. Anything above 76.5 is an outlier. Okay. So taking a look at our data, what do you think the outliers are? Anything below 24.5, Claire? 20. Anything bigger than 76.5? 80 and 86. Perfect. So these three are my outliers in my data. Any questions on how I got my outliers? All right. Why don't we go to example number 2? We have a list of numbers I want you to calculate to see if there are any outliers I'll keep example 1 on the board here. I'll give you a few minutes to work on it and I will, but do you kind of want to take us through how you got your answer?
Okay. So first, I ordered the numbers from smallest to greatest. After that, I noticed it was in odd numbers, so I figured just get the median first, which would be in the 5th position, which is why it's 38. And then I got the quartile 1 by times 0.5 times 9, which equals 35, which rounds up to 3, so it would be 34. And then quartile 3 I times 0.5 times 9, which got 6.75, which rounds up to 7, which would get 45. And then I went to get the IQR. I don't know. So I just subtracted the 2 of them, which got 11. And then after that, I 34 minus 3 over 2 times 11, which is 17.5. And 45 plus 3 times 11, which is 6.5. Therefore, I switched the numbers that were below 17.5 and above 61.5 to make our outline.
Perfect. Nice job, Claire. Does anyone have any questions on this example? All right. Oh.
Is it just asking us to find the outliers? Do we need to state the median or?
No, I guess that's a good question, right? So the median here, we actually didn't use it, right? So yeah, you wouldn't actually need to state the median, but it's always good to find random stuff. Jules.
I don't know if that's the maximum, but for the Q1 I got was 20.25.
You got 20.25 when you multiplied?
No, not that one. The one below it, the IQ.
Oh, this one. You got 20.25. Let me see your paper.
That's why I asked.
Right. Any other questions on this example? All right. So we're actually going to put all of this together into a specific type of graph that we haven't talked about yet, but it's called the box and whiskers plot. Anyone seen a box and whiskers plot before? It seems a little familiar, right? Now the formatting on my page is really, really wrong, but if we flip to the next page, I have an example of what a box and whiskers plot looks like. Okay? I know it looks crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on here. The first thing we're going to talk about are the outliers. Okay? Outliers in a box and whisker plot, they're represented by little circles or stars. Okay, so whenever you see a star or a circle, those are the outliers. Okay, then we have these vertical lines on our graph. And what these lines represent are the minimum and maximum values that aren't outliers. And we'll talk about that. Might make more sense when we do an example. Then we have Q1, the median, and Q3 in the middle of the box. Okay, so why don't we do an example? I know it looks kind of crazy with all of the definitions up here, but it might be a little bit easier once we go through an actual example. Okay, so here we have an example. We have a list of numbers and we want to create a box and whiskers plot. Okay, so the first thing I might want to do is order the data from smallest to largest, right? Now I'm going to cheat. I have it written down already. So I got 1, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 26, 30, and 31. Okay. Now, because I like to make mistakes, I'm going to number my numbers. Makes it a little bit easier. Okay, perfect. So we got 9 numbers. Okay, anyone want to tell me the median? Okay. 22, it's the middle number, right? So you can cross off pairs to get the middle number. The median is going to be 22. Okay. What do I multiply to get the 25th percentile? 0.25 times 9. 9 is the total number of things, right? When I multiply that out, I'm getting 2.25. What does that round up to? 3, good. I know it goes against everything you've learned about in math, but just for percentiles, we're rounding up. Okay, the third number is 20. So that's our 25th percentile or our first quartile. Going to the next page, we can find the 75th percentile in the same way, right? So 0.75 times 9. When I do that, I think I get 6.75, which rounds up to 7, right? And our seventh number is 26. Okay. Part E asked me to find the 5-number summary. Can someone remind me what the 5-number summary is? Jules?
The lowest number and the highest number, then Q1, the median.
Awesome, but the highest number is at the end, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's what you meant. Median and Q3. Okay. 5-number summary consists of 5 numbers. The first one is our lowest number. Can someone tell me what the lowest number is? 1, good. Okay, looking at my notes, I'm getting 20, 22, and 26 for Q1 through Q3, based on what I found before. And what's the highest number? 31, good. Okay, now the 5-number summary typically has commas between the numbers, and you don't need to label them, but I like to. This is my 5-number summary. Okay. What 2 numbers am I subtracting to find the IQR? And 20, good. So I think I'm getting 6 for my IQR. Okay. Next, we're gonna find outliers, right? So let's find our lower outlier boundary. And this is the equation that you kind of need to memorize. We're taking Q1 and subtracting off 3/2 times the IQR. So let's just do that. I'm going to take 20, which is my Q1, subtract off 3/2 times 6. I always like to do the multiplication first. 20 minus 9 gives me 11. Once I found my lower outlier boundary, I can find my upper one, right? Okay, and that's going to be Q3 plus 3/2 times the IQR. Okay, which gives me 26 plus 3/2 times 6. So that's going to be 26 plus 9, which gives me 35. Taking a look at your data, is there any outliers here? Okay. Oh, 1, right? Because, well, 1 is less than 11. There's nothing bigger than 35, right? No, right? So 1 is the outlier. Perfect. Any questions on how I got these outliers? Okay. Next is making the box and whiskers plot, okay? Making the box and whiskers plot is a little tricky if you don't organize your information correctly. So what I like to do, and you don't have to do this if you don't want to, I like to make a little chart. The first thing I'm going to write is I'm going to figure out what the lowest number that's not an outlier is. So lowest number that is not an outlier. Okay. Anyone found that number? 19, perfect. Okay, so it's the lowest number, but 1's the outlier, so it's got to be 19. Okay, I'm going to write Q1, the median, and Q3 just to remind myself what they are. So 20, 22, and 26. Finally, I'm going to write the highest number that is not an outlier. Okay. What's that number? 31, good, because, well, It's really big, and there's no outliers that are bigger than that. And I don't know why this mouse is right on the number. Okay. So I kind of organized my information. The outlier up top and all these numbers underneath letter H. This is all we need to know to make this box and whisker plot. Okay, this is all the information that goes in here. So to make it, first you're going to start by drawing a line, one big line. Okay. And this is going to be a number line. So looking at our information, we got 1, 19, 20, all the way through 31. Where should I start on my number line? 0. 0 is a good place to start. Where do you think we should end? 31, right? Now let's say I want to like go by 5 since I don't feel like writing every number between 0 and 31. Maybe 35. Yeah, 35 is good. Okay. And since I kind of decided on going up by 5s, there's really no right answer on what the spacing should be. Now I'm going to do my little cheating method where I'm just going to write little intervals and see if I make it to the end. And if I don't, we'll figure out what to do. 25, 30. Yep, I messed up. So instead of recreating my number line, I'm just going to erase and write 35. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So when I make my box and whiskers plot, the first thing I'm going to do is plot my outliers because those are easy, right? Star at 1. You can make a circle, star, smiley face, don't care. The other numbers are going to be vertical lines. Okay, so we got a 19. I'm going to place a vertical line around 19. We've got 20, 22, 26, and 31. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vertical lines that I've drawn. Now, there's going to be a box and a whisker somewhere here. What I like to do, and I think it's the easiest method to do this, I'm going to draw my whiskers first because I know the whiskers go from the outside vertical lines into the box, right? So let me just draw little horizontal lines that connect these outer lines to the middle. Once we do this, we're going to be left with 3 lines in the middle. This makes my box. So I'm just going to finish up my box here. And that's it. Okay. We drew our outliers. The whiskers represent the highest and lowest numbers that aren't outliers. And then we have the Q1 through Q3. Any questions on that? All right. If you flip to the next page, you're cracking me up now. I don't even know why. Your face was getting really red. All right. If you flip to the next page, I know the spacing's wrong. Why don't you try example 2? Yeah, I'll give you some time to work on example 2, and we will come back in a tiny bit. But I definitely want to give some time for this quiz review. So why don't we just go through this together? If you're still working, feel free to zone me out while you're working on this. But what did we get for the median? Oh, the median was 22, right? And it wasn't actually, we didn't stop on a number, right? We actually had to add the 2 middle numbers. But since the 2 middle numbers were 22, we got 22, right? Okay. To find the 25th percentile, we multiplied 0.25 by what number? 10, good, because there's 10 numbers. And we got 2.5, which rounded up to 3, right? And what was the 25th percentile? 19, good. All right. 75th percentile, same story, 0.75 times 10. And I think that gave us 7.5, right? Which rounded up to 8. What was the 75th percentile? 27, perfect. Okay, can someone tell me their 5-number summary? Claire? Perfect. So remember the lowest number, the highest number, and then the numbers that go in between are our quartiles. All right, the IQR was found by subtracting the third quartile minus the second quartile. So I think I got 8 here, right? To find the outliers, we would take Q1 or 19, subtract 3/2 times the IQR. You should have gotten 7, okay? To find the upper one, 27 plus 3/2 times 8, should have given you 39, okay? Based on these two numbers, what was the outlier? 40, good, okay? To make your box plot, of course, you don't need to start the way that I do, but I like to organize my information a little bit just so I don't mess up. The lowest number that wasn't an outlier was which number? 15. We got our Q1, which is 19, 22, and 27. And what was the highest number that wasn't an outlier? 30, perfect. Okay. So when we make our number line, you don't need to start at 0. If you do, that's fine. I started at 15 and I went by 5s until I hit 40. Okay, because, well, the highest number is the outlier, which is 40. The lowest number that is an outlier was 15. Okay, I drew my star at 40. I drew my lines 15, 19, 22, 27, and 30. I connected my whiskers first, and then I finished the box with the last 3 lines. Any questions on this box and whiskers block? Nice. Do you feel confident on making these? Yes. Perfect. Okay, so with the remaining time that we have, I have a little quiz review for you.